Viewers, it is now 88 days since isolation started in San Jose. I just wanted to capture for you what is happening here. We have been in isolation mode close to 3 months now, and the weather is a balmy 60 degrees. My heartbeat is, I guess, doing okay. Well, we are very, very low on snacks, which perhaps explains why I'm not really ballooned out of control. But anyway, jokes apart, today we have the pleasure of company of Abhijit Iyer-Mitra. Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel.
Jai Bhavani, thanks for having me.
Jai Bhavani to you indeed. And it's been a while since we've had a conversation, Abhijit. So how are things in terms of what's been going on with COVID at your place? Are you able to get some good food, or Chef Iyer is in play now?
I've lost about 6 kilos, and I cook a lot of food at home. I'm taking lockdown very seriously, of course, because now when lockdown ends is when there's a higher chance of infection. My neighborhood has about 36 cases and 5 mortalities, so pretty high death rate as well. So maybe my neighborhood has a highly virulent strain of it, so I'm taking it very, very seriously. But talking about viruses, I think, this last few weeks, we've seen some rather interesting virus developments of the computer kind, haven't we?
Yes, indeed. Now, we are going to talk today about the cyber wars between Israel and Iran. And to know all about it, Abhijit, take it away.
Okay. So this week, what happened? Well, I mean, the last few months or so, there's no dedicated timeline on this. Iran tried something quite foolhardy, which was trying a cyber attack on Israeli desalination plants. Now, if you know Israel, one of the things is that till the 90s, till the early 2000s, in fact, most of Israel's water came from the Galilee and the Jordan River and all those rivers flowing from Turkey and Syria, which put it in an extremely vulnerable position. The Israelis have gone to war over Syrian and Jordanian plans to stop waters and things like that. But in the early 2000s, they took a strategic decision, and the Israelis, they're very good with innovation. So they came up with these pioneering desalination technologies. And today they have a huge water surplus. And these desalination technologies are being exported across the world. So, and they're quite dependent on them. So the thing is that Iran tried rather foolishly to cyber attack one of these, a few of these installations. And what did the Israelis do? They just immediately retaliated and crippled a Iranian port through a cyber attack.
Yes, indeed. And viewers, for those of you who are interested in the technology that Israel uses, their desalination plant is among the most efficient. If you take 100 gallons of salty water, you get back 85 gallons of purified water with all the salts added in, I suppose. So that is a very high extraction efficiency, which makes it a very viable product. Now, I'm hearing news that when Iran attacked Israel, they went after 6 of their desalination plants, and Israel, in a retaliation. Now, there are 2 ways that they could have done this, and I'm curious on your inputs on how this did it. They did it. You see, this is their container terminal in Bandar Abbas, Shabab or something like that.
Shahid Rajaee.
Yeah, right. And so there were 2 ways to do this. One is that they went directly and put some spanners into the main software, or they went through one of those people who are using the terminal and then use that to infect their systems. I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't know which way they got in, but they got in and they completely ruined their database, is what I heard.
So look, there are several clues about this. What we know about the attack is we still don't know the details of what exactly Iran tried to pull off with Israeli cyber defenses at their desalination plants. The thing is that Israel from day one has been taking cyber extremely seriously. Their main cyber, unlike most countries that focus on cyber protecting government websites and things like that, their focus since day one has been preventing the real world consequences of a virtual attack. They're quite okay with, if you take down their defense ministry website or their whatever website, they don't worry about that. They are worried about critical installations and things like that. And for obvious reasons, they don't talk about it, because the moment you talk about it, then you kind of know you can glean important information on working around it. But if this had happened, given Israel's dependence on these desalination plants, the physical impact would have been quite great. Now, Israeli retaliation policy is very clear. If there isn't a physical impact, then Israel will retaliate without a mortality physical consequence for the attacker. But if there is a physical impact, as in there are mortalities or fatalities and things like that, then they will ensure a kinetic attack, not necessarily just a cyber attack. Now, the Iranian attack did not kill anyone. It didn't even succeed from the looks of it. So what do the Israelis do? Now, if you go into Google Maps and zoom in on Bandar Abbas is a city, and it's that little bit of, where the Straits of Hormuz actually start off. Now, Shahid Rajaee is about 15 kilometers to the southwest of it in a shielded area. And when you go to Google Maps, you see that it's where all the big docks are. So that is where all your big tankers come in and both offload and load up oil and gas and whatnot to take back. And what has happened here is that it has basically crippled the operations of the port. So you have produce and things like that. Now, Iran exports agricultural produce as well. They have very good agricultural produce. Imagine just a few days of delay out there can cause rotting and spoilage. With the oil and gas, it's easy, but just staying in port causes millions of dollars worth of damage to ships that should be out on the sea and earning money for their owners and things like that. So it's caused quite serious financial damage to people operating out of Iranian ports. And from what we know is that it has crippled the port operating system. It's called a TOS, a terminal operating system. Now, there are two ways of looking at this. One is that the terminal operating system could have been infected through an interface of one of the ships. One of the ships might have had corrupted software, which then, in its Bluetooth or whatever radio frequency interface with the terminal operating system. Because, when the ship comes in, it will automatically identify itself, though you also have, how navies are very hung up on traditions and things like that. So even merchant navies, they like to do this, aye, aye, sir, and whistling you on board and all that nonsense. So you have physical protocol as well, but mostly everything can be done electronically. It then offloads the manifest of what all it's carrying to the port, and then the port operating system, terminal operating system, basically then sequences out the container offload and then the onloading sequence and all of that. This has been completely crippled. You have a state now where the cranes aren't even able to move because they're all electronically controlled. And to get port operators to do this now physically, it takes a much longer period of time. Let me give you a simple example. Singapore is able to offload and upload a ship in about 6 hours maximum, right? Depending on the size. Madras port, which is not automated, takes about 14 days. So you understand the level of efficiency retardation that a manual operation takes. So it's not a sort of destruction of the port. It's a massive increase in the time and reduction in efficiency of the port. Now, how did the attack happen? One is through the software of this terminal operating system where it automatically interfaces, but I don't think that is how it was done, because a terminal operating system has built-in safeguards against malignant use. And this is where the provider of the port operating system comes in. Guess-based company, Singapore Port Management Company.
Yes.
And now anybody with half a brain who installs Singaporean critical infrastructure knows that Singapore and Israel have an extremely close intelligence sharing agreement. They have an extremely close defense relationship. Most of Singapore's electronic warfare and cyber warfare capabilities are procured from Israel. They export a lot back to Israel as well. So I personally suspect that whatever the Singaporeans provided them with had some kind of a latent line of software or something like that lying there, which the Israelis just exploited. It wasn't obviously a physical chip, unlike when the Iranian centrifuges were destroyed during the nuclear cyber attack.
That happened which,
it
what
was
time?
software.
When did that happen, Abhijit? The cyber attack, centrifuge?
I what, in the 2010s sometime.
Okay.
The Iranians use a variant of the Pakistani centrifuges. This was all part of the Abdul Qadir Khan, AQ Khan nuclear smuggling network. And what they did was they originally wrote a very sophisticated line of software. And then they decided, what, this is too sophisticated. The point of writing software is that the other person should know that they have been attacked, but they should not be able to trace it back to you. So instead of using software that they wouldn't even know had been a cyber attack, they used this sort of rather cruder software called Stuxnet, which is transferred through a Siemens chip, and that actually required physical transfer. And unfortunately, the country that got worst affected by Stuxnet was India, because the Russian contractors that were building the Iranian nuclear reactor, the USB sticks they also used in some of our projects, and we don't know the extent of the damage in India, but it certainly did damage a lot in India. And what this thing did was, it fooled the Siemens industrial processor into over spinning the uranium hexafluoride. So it would damage the things, it would go beyond capacity, and they would just break. So it resulted in an extremely high failure rate. And it was a few months, I think it was almost a year before the Iranians figured out that they had been cyber attacked, because all their centrifuges were just crashing left, right, and center, and they didn't know what was happening. They reduced the efficiency and it was still crashing. And it took them a while to figure it out that they've been had. And those are the best kind of cyber attacks, because one of the things is, if a cyber attack happens immediately, you check your videos, you check your logs, and you see who has come in, and you can roughly trace it back to 5 or 10 individuals who you then arrest, interrogate, and then figure out who did it. Even unwittingly, it doesn't matter. But when you do it over a latent period of a few months, there's so many thousands of people who have come in, they can't even be detected. I mean, you can't just round up your entire nuclear workforce.
Right.
So, it's fun stuff like this.
So, so it could be one of the the terminal operating system itself could have been exploited by Israel, or one of the people who are downloading, uploading data, it could have crept in through that also. Is the port operational now electronically, or is it still in manual mode? Do you know?
It's still in manual. We did a satellite image scan of it. Boats that we've seen there. Look, it's a bit tough to tell, because it's because of COVID. A lot of ships are waiting outside the United States without having come in and things like that. And there's all kinds of, and Iran is going through a second wave of COVID. So we don't know if it's COVID related that all the ships we saw there a few weeks back are still there, but they're still there. And either way, either COVID crippled them or the cyber attack crippled them. Either way, they're crippled.
Very, very interesting. And I think, Abhijit, perhaps we should do a separate hangout on the things that AQ Khan, the beneficiary countries of AQ Khan stuff, North Korea, Libya, Iran, I don't know what other country. I have a feeling there may be a few more.
Allegedly, India also, apparently we also benefited from it. There's a particular centrifuge design which apparently derives from the AQ Khan we'd better not talk about it. It gets a bit, well, let's just not talk about Indian nuclear stuff for the moment.
Right, right. And Abhijit, that was a wonderful conversation we had. And these games go on. Sometimes the people get caught. The long and short of it is, Israel is a model state in terms of how to tackle, how to safeguard its, borders, not just, cyber. They have this Iron Dome, which also, is the envy of the world. So they have a lot of fights among themselves. For example, Benjamin Netanyahu went for like months being the prime minister without being the prime minister. There was this, what you call as the acting prime minister. They couldn't figure out who else to come in and should rule.
And now formed a government of national unity with Benny Gantz. But the thing about Israel is we need to be very clear that furious Israeli conversations are qualitatively different from furious American and furious Indian conversations. You look at the caliber of conversations that you have in general. In India, people will just use rhetoric. It's not that Israel doesn't have these rhetorical fights. America too. There's a lot of the rhetoric is extraordinarily vicious between left and right. And sometimes it started infiltrating into the war room as well. In Israel, on the other hand, you never know when people are fighting or being friendly, because in the war room, they are so vicious with each other. The default isn't success. The default is every program is a failure. You could have gone in, not lost a single aircraft, wiped out every enemy tank that you saw, and it will still be classified as a failure unless, everybody on the table agrees it is. The kind of takedowns I've seen in private conversations in Israel, they are so vicious. But then that viciousness ends there because it is operational critique. And when you go out, you're the best of friends, you get a beer. Sometimes you won't go out and get a beer because you're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. But the political venom does not come into the boardroom or the war room. And that is something we really need to learn. This is the difference between a low human capital country like India and an extremely high human capital country like Israel.
Yes, indeed. And to get a flavor of how things work in Israel, I urge all our viewers to watch this series on Netflix called Fauda, Fauda, which means chaos. Very interesting serial. I don't know if you have had a chance to watch it, Abhijit. It was very interesting.
I love it. People tell me I look like Doron, the protagonist.
Yes, indeed, you do have a spitting resemblance to him, and thank you. By the way, I haven't seen him laugh much, so you might want to dial back your laughter a little bit. Well, as always, a very interesting and in-depth conversation with you, Abhijit. Thank you very much, and we'll be back with more such conversations. Once again, thank you very much, Abhijit.
Har Har Mahadev.
Har Har Mahadev.